Funny thing about silence, it feels safe, doesn't it? You keep your mouth shut. You think you're protecting yourself, hiding from judgment, avoiding the blade of truth. But silence isn't safety. It's a prison. While you're busy swallowing your words, the world keeps writing your story for you. Every time you bite down on the truth burning inside, someone else speaks louder, and their voice drowns yours. And you wonder why you're overlooked, why you're invisible, why fate keeps chewing you up. Maybe it's because the one chance you had to spit fire, to let the world choke on your words, you stayed quiet. And maybe that's why the voice above whispers, you better open your mouth. Silence is a disguise that betrays you. People wear it like armor, thinking it will protect them, thinking if they stay quiet, no one will notice, no one will strike, no one will see the cracks in their skin. But silence doesn't protect, it exposes. Silence tells the world you have no fight, no edge, no spark. You think you're hiding in it. But all you're doing is painting yourself invisible while the world walks right over you. They don't respect the one who stays quiet. They devour them. You see, silence pretends to be strength. People dress it up with pretty words. They call it patience. They call it wisdom. They call it self-control. But deep down, silence is fear wearing a mask. It's the fear of being wrong, the fear of being judged, the fear of being hated, the fear of shaking the cage you're locked in. So you clamp your jaw, you swallow your words, and you think you're safe. But what you don't realize is that silence betrays you louder than any scream could. Because when you don't speak, they will. And they'll twist your quiet into weakness. They'll twist your stillness into surrender. Every time you keep your mouth shut, someone else takes your place. Someone else fills the air, their words shaping reality, while you sit like a ghost. And you know what happens to ghosts. People forget them. They fade. They're stepped over, stepped past, stepped on. Silence makes you the shadow in your own story. You're there, but you don't matter, because you chose not to matter. And the world doesn't wait for those who refuse to speak. It erases them. Think about it. Every revolution, every shift, every power grab was sparked by a voice, not by silence. The world never moved because someone sat in the corner, lips sealed, hoping things would magically change. No. It moved because someone ripped open their throat and let their words cut deeper than any blade. Silence never saved anyone. It only fed the wolves. Because the wolves love when you're quiet. Quiet prey is easier to catch. Quiet prey doesn't bite back. And yet people cling to silence as if it's safety. They think not speaking will shield them from pain. But the pain comes anyway. The betrayal comes anyway. The loss comes anyway. And when it does, silence leaves you with nothing but regret. You could have spoken. You could have roared. You could have carved your name into the air. But instead, you let the moment die, and the moment took you with it. Silence disguises itself as protection, but it always betrays you in the end. Even in the smallest things, silence eats you alive. You're in a room. You feel the weight of injustice, the sting of lies, the pull of truth clawing inside your chest. And you say nothing. You sit there, motionless, hoping someone else will speak, someone else will rise. And when they don't, when the room shifts against you, you realize your silence didn't save you. It condemned you. Because you agreed without agreeing. You submitted without a word. Silence is consent to your own destruction. The cruelest part. Silence doesn't just betray you to the world. It betrays you to yourself. You swallow the truth so many times that eventually it tastes like poison. You start to choke on it. You lose your own voice because you never use it. And when you finally need it, when the world finally corners you, you open your mouth and nothing comes out. You've killed your own weapon through neglect. That's the price of silence. The world isn't moved by closed mouths. It isn't swayed by silence. It feeds on voices, it listens to noise. It bends to the ones who aren't afraid to bleed their words into the air. Silence disguises itself as your shield, but in reality, it hands you over on a silver platter. It whispers, stay safe, stay hidden, stay quiet. But all it really means is, stay powerless. Silence betrays because it makes you believe you're invisible to danger, when really you're invisible to power. And invisible people don't survive long. Power belongs to the voice that dares to speak, not the one who waits, not the one who hides, not the one who rehearses the perfect sentence in their head, but never lets it out. Power never bows to silence. It bends to noise, to courage, to the sound that slices through the air and makes people turn their heads. A voice doesn't even have to be right. It only has to be loud enough, sharp enough, fearless enough to be heard. Because the world isn't ruled by truth. It's ruled by whoever has the courage to speak it first and speak it louder. Think about the way people follow. They don't gather around the quiet figure in the corner, the one who thinks and thinks, but says nothing. They gather around the one who opens their mouth, who spits words with fire, who fills the silence with something that demands attention. That's how power works. It gravitates toward the voice, not the thought. You can think like a king, but if you never speak, you're just a prisoner in your own skull. Meanwhile, someone with half your mind, but twice your courage will rise above you, because they dared to speak when you didn't. The world is noisy. Everyone is clawing for space, screaming for recognition, fighting to be heard. And in that chaos, silence is death. If your voice doesn't cut through the noise, you don't exist. Power belongs to the ones who step into the noise and claim it. The ones who don't wait for permission to speak. The ones who don't worry about who agrees. The ones who let their words bleed, even if they tremble. Because trembling words still carry more power than silence. Silence is nothing. Silence is the empty chair no one remembers. There's a reason history remembers speeches, not silences. A reason movements are built on words, not on silence. A reason leaders rise through the force of their voices, not their ability to stay quiet. The voice is the weapon, the voice is the currency, the voice is the mark that carves itself into the minds of others. Power doesn't belong to those who play it safe. It belongs to those who open their mouths when it matters most. when everyone else is too afraid to. And here's the cruel truth. The world doesn't care about fairness. It doesn't reward the one who knows the most, who works the hardest, who thinks the deepest. It rewards the one who speaks, because speaking makes you visible. Visibility is power. A single sentence shouted with conviction can outweigh 1,000 silent thoughts. That's why the fearless voice always wins. It claims ground before the quiet ones even realize the ground is being taken. Every time you speak, you stake a claim. You carve out space that belongs to you. And every time you stay quiet, someone else takes that space instead. You lose it forever. You give it away without a fight. The silence feels safe in the moment, but later you look back and see the empty space where your voice should have been, and you realize you didn't protect yourself. You erased yourself. Power isn't polite. It doesn't wait for the perfect moment. It doesn't bow to doubt. It belongs to the ones who dare, who open their mouths even when their voice shakes, even when the room is against them. Because the moment you speak, you force the world to acknowledge you. They may hate you, they may resist you, they may fight you, but they cannot ignore you. And being impossible to ignore is where power begins. So you can stay quiet, blend into the crowd, protect yourself in the shadows of silence. But don't be surprised when someone else rises. Someone braver, someone bolder, someone who isn't afraid to tear the air apart with their words. Because power doesn't care about who deserved it more. Power only cares about who dared to claim it. And in the end, it always belongs to the voice that speaks. The world listens to noise, not whispers. You can spend your life speaking softly, carefully, politely, hoping someone will lean in and catch your words. But they won't. They're not listening for whispers. They're drowning in chaos, in shouts, in the loud clashing of voices, all demanding to be heard. Whispers get swallowed. Whispers get lost. The world doesn't bend to quiet truths. It bends to the voice that screams them. The voice that cuts through the storm like glass breaking in the middle of the night. You want to be remembered. You want to be followed. You want to leave a scar on this world. Then you don't whisper, because whispers may hold wisdom. Whispers may carry secrets, but they die in the noise. The world isn't built for the quiet ones. It's built for those who make the ground shake when they speak. You can have the sharpest thoughts, the deepest truths, the most powerful fire burning in your chest. But if you release it like a dying breath, the world will trample right over it. And someone louder will steal your place. That's why power belongs to noise. Because noise demands attention. Noise forces heads to turn. Noise breaks through the thick fog of distraction people live in every day. Do you really think anyone is paying attention? They're not. They're half asleep, buried in screens, hypnotized by routine. Whispers never wake them. Only noise rips them out of that coma. The world doesn't change for what's subtle. It changes for what's impossible to ignore. Look around. The people who rise, the people who dominate, the people who pull strings and move crowds. They're not whisperers. They're shouters. They're disruptors. They shake rooms with their words, even if those words are lies, even if those words are madness. The world doesn't care about truth as much as it cares about volume. If you're loud enough, strong enough, relentless enough, you can make people believe anything. A lie screamed at the right pitch will echo longer than a truth whispered in the corner. And that's the brutal reality. Being right isn't enough. Being wise isn't enough. Being good isn't enough. If you can't cut through the noise with noise of your own, you're invisible. The world doesn't hear whispers. It doesn't have the patience. It doesn't have the attention. The world listens to whoever makes the most disruption, whoever forces their voice into the ears of others, whether they want it or not. That's how you carve your existence into the chaos, by being louder than it. You think dignity is in silence. That respect comes from restraint. Maybe in stories, maybe in the fantasy people tell themselves. But in reality, restraint gets buried, silence gets erased, whispers get ignored. You can be respected in your head, but if the world never hears you, it will never remember you. Respect doesn't come from being quiet. It comes from being undeniable. And don't confuse noise with desperation. Noise isn't about begging to be heard. It's about demanding it. It's about filling space so fully that there's no room for anyone else's voice until you've finished. It's about smashing your words into the world with such force that even your enemies are forced to acknowledge you. They don't have to like you. They don't have to agree with you. But they can't erase you. That's the difference between whispers and noise. Whispers vanish. Noise stays. Noise lingers in the air long after it's been spoken. You can whisper all you want, but you'll die with your whispers still trapped in your throat, unheard, forgotten, erased by the storm of those who dared to be louder. The world doesn't care how fragile your voice feels, how scared you are, how heavy the truth is inside you. If you want it to matter, you have to rip it out of your chest and make it impossible to ignore. Because the world only listens to noise, not whispers. And if you don't become the noise, you'll be crushed beneath it. Closed mouths surrender control to others. That's the truth no one likes to admit. You sit there with your lips sealed, thinking you're safe, thinking you're clever, thinking you're watching, observing, planning. But every second you stay silent, someone else is speaking, someone else is shaping, someone else is taking the very power you refused to claim. You don't hold control by keeping it inside. You hand it over the moment you choose silence. Control doesn't disappear, it shifts. If you don't hold it, someone else will. And the easiest way to lose it: keep your mouth shut. When you say nothing, the world fills the space for you. They define you. They decide for you. They speak on your behalf. They twist your silence into consent, into weakness, into proof that you don't matter. You think you're protecting yourself. But what you're really doing is bowing your head and letting them write your story while you sit like a puppet with cut strings. Closed mouths create openings. Openings for manipulation, for lies, for betrayal. Because when you don't speak, they will. They'll speak for you. They'll speak over you. They'll speak against you. And the longer you stay silent, the more their version becomes the truth. Words don't just disappear when you hold them in. They get replaced by someone else's. You think you're neutral, but silence is never neutral. Silence is surrender. The cruel part. You think silence makes you invisible, untouchable. But silence makes you a target. People see you as easy to control, easy to dismiss, easy to erase. The one who doesn't speak is the one no one fears. And if they don't fear you, they'll use you. They'll strip you. They'll step over you. They'll build their power on your silence while you rot in the corner, convincing yourself you're being wise. Wisdom without words is nothing but cowardice dressed up as dignity. Control isn't about muscles, about money, about weapons. Control begins with the voice. The one who speaks sets the direction. The one who speaks creates the narrative. The one who speaks defines the rules. If you don't open your mouth, you don't just lose the fight. You never even enter it. And the ones who do speak, they're already building the walls around you, while you sit in your silence pretending you're safe. You've seen it before. In a room full of people, the loudest one doesn't always know the most, doesn't always have the best ideas, but they take the room. They take the energy. They take the control. Why? Because they dared to speak when others didn't, and the ones with their mouths closed, they vanish into the background, forgotten, erased. Their silence becomes their own executioner. Closed mouths aren't shields, they're shackles. They keep you bound while others move freely. They trick you into thinking you're holding on to power, when really, you're letting it bleed out of you, drip by drip, into the hands of those less afraid than you. And make no mistake, they'll use it. They'll twist it. They'll build entire empires on the silence you handed them, while you sit staring at the floor wondering when it all slipped away. Silence may feel safe in the moment, but it's the slowest kind of suicide. Every time you close your mouth, you cut off a piece of your own power and donate it to someone else. You give them control without them ever having to take it. You betray yourself with every swallowed word, every unsaid truth. Every moment you could have claimed ground, but instead stayed quiet. You think silence saves you, but it damns you. Closed mouths surrender control to others. And once it's gone, once it's been handed away, don't expect to get it back. Because control doesn't return to the silent. It stays with the ones who had the courage to claim it. Truth rots inside when it's never released. You can try to bury it. You can try to cage it. You can swallow it 1,000 times. But it doesn't disappear. It festers. It poisons. It eats you alive from the inside out. People think silence keeps the truth safe, like a secret treasure locked in a box. But that box isn't made of steel. It's made of flesh, and flesh decays. The longer you keep it locked away, the more it twists, the more it burns, until you're left choking on your own unspoken words. Truth isn't patient. It doesn't sit quietly waiting for the right time. It screams inside you, scratching at your throat, pounding against your chest. Every time you hold it back, it grows sharper, darker, heavier, and eventually, it doesn't protect you anymore. It destroys you. That's the price of silence. You think you're keeping control, but all you're really doing is building a slow death sentence. The ones who hold back their truth always pay the same way. Their minds fracture, their hearts corrode, their voices weaken until they forget how to use them. You can see it in their eyes, the weight of everything unsaid dragging them down, the endless replay of moments they could have spoken but didn't. That guilt doesn't go away. That regret becomes the only language they speak. But it's too late, because the truth they buried has already rotted into bitterness. And here's the cruel trick. The truth doesn't just rot inside you. It leaks out in other ways. In your anger, in your silence, in your self-destruction. You think you're hiding it, but everyone can feel it. The tension in your shoulders, the hesitation in your steps, the bitterness in your tone. The truth you never released ends up speaking louder than words ever could. And it paints you as weak, broken, untrustworthy. You wanted to protect yourself, but you only poisoned yourself. Unspoken truth doesn't disappear from the world either. It becomes someone else's weapon. Because when you don't speak, someone else controls the story. Someone else writes the version that suits them, while you sit in silence with the real story rotting in your chest. And by the time you try to speak, by the time you finally open your mouth, it's too late. No one cares. No one believes. No one listens to a voice that waited too long. People convince themselves they're waiting for the right moment. That silence is strategy. That timing is everything. But truth doesn't wait for timing. It demands release. Holding it back doesn't protect you. It betrays you. Every second you keep it caged, it turns darker. It turns heavier. It turns more toxic. Until one day it bursts out, not as strength, not as courage, but as poison. You lose control of it. It consumes you instead of saving you. That's the irony of silence. You think it shields you, but really it feeds the very thing you fear. The truth you're afraid to speak is the only thing that could set you free. But instead you lock it inside and let it become your executioner. And the world doesn't pity you. It doesn't stop spinning because you were too afraid to open your mouth. It forgets you. It replaces you. It buries you under the noise of those who dared to speak their truth, even if it burned them. There is no peace in holding back. There is no strength in silence. Truth is a fire. It was never meant to stay hidden. Hold it too long, and it burns you alive from the inside. Release it, and it burns the world instead. That's the choice. That's the only way it works. Keep it in, and it rots you. Let it out, and it saves you. Truth doesn't disappear. It only decides who it destroys first. Opening your mouth is the first act of defiance. Not against the world, not against the enemy, but against the prison you've been living in. Because that's what silence is. A cell with invisible bars. A cage you've convinced yourself is safer than the battlefield outside. The first sound you make, the first word that cuts through the air, it isn't just noise. It's rebellion. It's you refusing to suffocate under the weight of obedience. It's you declaring war on every unspoken rule designed to keep you quiet. The moment you speak, you become dangerous. Not because of the words themselves, but because of what they mean. You're no longer controllable. The people who thrive on silence, who feed off your hesitation, they don't fear your fists. They don't fear your strength. They fear your voice. Because once your mouth opens, once your truth slips out, they can't put it back in. They can't cage it. They can't bury it. A spoken truth spreads like fire, even if it's only a spark, and sparks have a habit of burning down the whole room. Most people never dare to take that step. They keep their lips sealed, their heads bowed, their voices swallowed. They convince themselves that silence is survival, that blending in keeps them safe. But safety is a trick, a leash disguised as comfort. Silence doesn't protect you, it enslaves you. And the ones who enforce that silence know it. They smile while you choke, they nod while you obey, and they win while you shrink. The first time you open your mouth, that illusion shatters. Suddenly, you're not a pawn anymore. You're a player, and players are unpredictable. There's a kind of violence in speaking. Not the kind that spills blood, but the kind that cracks open illusions, that shakes the walls people hide behind. Words can rip masks off, expose lies, cut through the fake peace everyone clings to. That's why opening your mouth feels like defiance. It's you refusing to play along with the script. It's you tearing up the lines that were written for you and scribbling your own in ink that can't be erased. But here's the truth. Once you open your mouth, you can't close it again. Not really. Because the world doesn't forget the first time you defy it. The silence you break never returns. You can't crawl back into the cage and pretend the bars aren't there. That's why it terrifies people. They know that speaking is irreversible. One word can make enemies out of friends. One truth can turn allies into strangers. One sound can shatter everything. And that's exactly why it's powerful. That's exactly why it matters. The ones who stay silent rot. They suffocate under secrets. They crumble under their own cowardice. They become ghosts long before they die. The ones who open their mouths, even once, leave scars. Scars on the people who tried to silence them. Scars on the systems that demanded obedience. Scars on the world itself. Defiance always leaves a mark, and a mark means you were here, you existed. You mattered. Opening your mouth doesn't mean shouting. It doesn't mean screaming louder than everyone else. It means daring to let the words that choke you finally breathe. It means allowing your voice to exist, even if it shakes, even if it's drowned out, even if no one listens. Because it's not about them. It's about you proving to yourself that you're not a slave to silence anymore, that you have a choice, that you've broken the first chain. The first act of defiance is always the hardest, but it's also the most important. Because once you've spoken, once you've tasted the power of your own voice, you realize something terrifying and beautiful at the same time. You were never powerless. You were never voiceless. You were never as small as they made you feel. You were just locked in a cage of your own making. And the key was in your mouth the whole time. And all it took was opening it.